Hey out there YouTube, Nick Cicada here. I'm going to do a bit of a different video this week, just with still frames and good old-fashioned film analysis and dissection. Recently, I had the pleasure of rewatching The Thing, John Carpenter's 1982 masterpiece, on the big screen. There was a crowd of extremely loud hipsters behind me the whole time I was watching it, who laughed at parts that weren't supposed to be funny, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed watching The Thing again. It's one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies of all time. There's a lot that can be said about why The Thing is a perfect storm of talent, from R.J. McCready, one of Kurt Russell's most iconic characters, to the fantastic score by Ennio Morricone, to, of course, John Carpenter's excellent direction. But one facet of The Thing that I think is often overlooked is the lighting in the film. So in this video, I want to kind of dive into that because I haven't seen any other videos cover this subject, and I think if you're going into filmmaking and you want to do lighting correctly, you can learn a lot about the subject from how The Thing tackles it. It's one of the best lit movies I can name off the top of my head, and there are a ton of extremely creative lighting decisions made throughout that I haven't really seen done anywhere else. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. Whoever did the lighting on The Thing did a phenomenal job. But the IMDb page for The Thing doesn't list anyone specifically in charge of lighting. The closest answer I got was a guy named John Antunovich, who's listed as the lamp operator on The Thing under the camera and electrical department. He also did the lighting work for Halloween 2, Halloween 3, and the fantastic, underrated comedy Death Becomes Her with Goldie Hawn and Bruce Willis. Of course, we can also assume that, being director of photography, as is often the case with John Carpenter projects, Dean Cundey had a lot to do with the lighting. He is a fantastic director of photography, one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, a really underrated craftsman, and I think it's appropriate to give credit there as well. Dean Cundey is behind the way most of your favorite movies look, and you don't even know which ones they are. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go through some of the shots that I think best display what I'm talking about when I say that The Thing has fantastic lighting. Right off the bat, the title card is itself a really interesting form of lighting. The light filters through the letters. Now, obviously, this title sequence wasn't created by the normal film crew, it was created by the VFX department, but it's a reference to the poster with the guy whose head is being refracted into all kinds of beams of light, like he's a prism. This is a really cool idea because it's as if the light, the knowledge of what the thing is some kind of illumination, some kind of revelation to the people at Outpost 31. That's an interesting concept, even if the thing itself isn't a light being. The other thing you'll notice here is that the title is in blue. Blue is a recurring motif in The Thing. Much like how green is the prominent color in David Cronenberg's The Fly, The Thing is a movie that understands having a dominant color, a color that you associate with the film. This will reappear as we go forward, but keep in mind blue is a very common color to see as far as lighting goes. We open on these nice shots of Antarctica. Now, this isn't actually Antarctica, it's actually Alaska, but the average audience member can't tell the difference between an Arctic climate and an Antarctic climate, so it doesn't really matter. The point is that these shots, as opposed to the more cartoony visuals later in the film, have a striking realism to them. They feel as if they're plucked straight out of a documentary with the overhead and the shaky cam, and Dean Cundey is kind of playing around with the snow glare. I live in Colorado and there's a lot of snow here, and if you step outside on a really snowy day, you practically go blind from all the snow because snow reflects light, much like the prism in the poster. So during these daytime shots, the glare of the snow is used to disorient the viewer in a very subtle way, in addition to the very alien-looking Antarctic landscape. These opening few scenes are shot to look extremely realistic and grounded so that the audience is allowed to suspend their disbelief for what comes later. Now we get our first clear shot of MacReady, lit visibly by the screen of the chess wizard computer that he's fighting against. Now if we take color psychology as a theme with the thing, then while blue might represent the thing, green might represent the feeling of isolation that all these guys are going through. That even if the thing doesn't get them from the blue, empty, cold wasteland outside, then the green, monotonous, sickly dysentery is going to take them. I don't know if this is intended by John Carpenter or Dean Cundey, but given that the chess wizard computer is a pretty prominent prop, I imagine they chose it for its sickly green color, because it does look pretty disgusting. In this scene, the entire room where Kurt Russell is sitting is bathed in this sickly, disgusting green. Here's an example of just why Outpost 31 looks so appealing in The Thing. Outpost 31 is very well lit, and unlike most sets in big-budget Hollywood productions, a lot of the lighting is just naturalistic. This is before movies had color correction or chrome keying or any of that fucking bullshit, so everything we see here is real. And most of the lighting is how the room would actually look if you were standing in it, which makes the film all the more realistic. The Thing's horrible fucking prequel is not only bad because they took out all the practical effects and replaced it with garbage, dopey CGI. It's also terrible because it's lit like a fucking nightmare. Nobody who worked on The Thing 2011 gave a shit about how to correctly light a movie, so the entire film front to back just looks like a pale slab of vomit. It doesn't look fun, it doesn't look colorful, it doesn't look exciting. It's just a bunch of characters wandering around in this gray, boring, monotonous sludge. The Thing 1982, on the other hand, is actually really fucking cool to look at, and you can notice little details like the pinball machine in the background, which has a lot of color and adds some dynamism to the scene. Again, this is still early in the film, so we have time to establish that these are real characters in a real room, and the room looks lit how it would actually be lit, by that lamp above the pool table, which is an iconic part of the movie in its own right. Now we get this sequence, which has to be one of my favorites in the entire movie, where Stevie Wonder's Superstition is blaring out in the distance, but the camera just pans through Outpost 31 all empty and forlorn, and the Doge goes near this shadow. Now, we don't know whose shadow this is. It could be the shadow of the dog guy, or it could be someone else's shadow. But The Thing is, in many ways, a kind of murder mystery whodunit type scenario where you try and figure out who the Thing is. So, the less we see of each guy, the better, because we don't know who we're looking at here. Obviously, this technique is very Hitchcockian, because in a lot of Hitchcock movies, you see shadows, and Hitchcock himself is a shadow. The use of shadows to suggest anonymity and uncertainty here is just pure fucking genius. I love The Thing so fucking much. Alright, now we get to the scene where the team is exploring the abandoned Norwegian outpost. This shot in particular really stuck out to me because it's an example of the actor actually being put in charge of the lighting, being able to manipulate the flashlight as they see fit. The flashlight is pointed directly at the camera so that the guy holding it, his face is completely obscured. And Kurt Russell's face obviously isn't obscured because we know MacReady isn't the Thing, but the other guy's face is obscured. And this is an extremely common theme within The Thing, the loss of individuality, becoming a faceless silhouette of carnage and death. And this is just pulled off in such an extremely subtle and effective way, because this guy isn't even the Thing yet, but he just looks menacing and threatening because you can't see his face. A lot like what Steven Spielberg does with Keys in E.T. This is really clever shit. It's like the guy holding the flashlight is saying, "Who goes there?" if you catch the drift. Alright, now for the autopsy scene. The autopsy scene is interesting because it's our first indication that something is extremely wrong and that the base is being plunged into the long night, head first into the freezing cold Antarctic winter where the sun isn't going to rise and there's no return. That conspicuously flickering TV set and the really obvious anatomy poster hung up on the wall right next to it aren't things which wouldn't be found at a medical room at an Antarctic research station per se, but they're arranged so as to give the indication that something extremely surreal is going on here, something mad scientisty and otherworldly. We've taken this extremely realistic set and we've added just a twinge of weird to it. But in terms of lighting, I think what you should take special note of in this scene is the window in the background, which is covered in blue frost and lighting up that glass equipment directly in front of it. Now what's interesting about the set and the thing is that lit windows are a common reoccurrence, not windows which are merely lit from the outside in the way an actual window would be lit, but a solid color, a window with just a solid color coming through it. And this is very German expressionism looking, like something out of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, where you just have very solid colors in architecture, windows and doors that don't lead on to realistic lighting, but just a solid slate of whatever light you want to let through. And this is a common thing in the thing. So we're going to see more of that as we go ahead. Stick to it, Windows, stick to it. Here, as the camera pans down onto Windows, we get some really nice light refraction from the overhead lamp. These overhead lamps are quite ubiquitous at Outpost 31, and they kind of give the sense that there are eyes watching over all these people, because keep in mind, the exterior is now plunged into darkness. So we got these really nice shots of people walking around underneath these big, overbearing, stress-inducing lights. Now a few notes about the scene with the Doge thing. There is a ton of nuance to the lighting present in this scene. For one, the Doge kennel is very poorly lit, which gives it the impression of a cold, damp prison. The fence on the outside of the kennel gives off really nice shadows. Then, of course, you have the uncertain flickering of the flashlight over the Doge thing when you initially see it. And, of course, you have shots like this, with, again, just a fantastic flashlight coming into frame. And in this case, the beam is actually lighting up some snow particulate that's been added in. Really cool shit. There's a ton of stuff to this Doge scene, so I can't go over it all. But suffice to say, it's extremely complex, and you can learn a ton about lighting just from this one scene. It's time to turn the thing into fucking schmores. That's right, fire is yet another fantastic source of light within the thing. Going back to color psychology, if we accept that the thing is represented by the color blue, then the bright, scintillating orange of the fire represents death to the thing, because fire is the only thing that can kill the thing. Bullets don't seem to affect it all that much. All you can do is let the bastard burn. Now keep in mind, this shit's real fire, and real explosions. They didn't have fucking CGI back in these days. This was back when movies were badass and cool. I think most of the really cool shots involving fire are mostly incidental, but then again, you're not gonna get a shot with a giant-ass explosion that isn't cool as fuck. Now they all stare over the charred wreckage of the thing, and the shot is helpfully obscured by the debris from the fire extinguishers. Just like the shot where the snow particulate is put in front of the flashlight to show off the beam a little more, here the smoke does a really good job of that. These guys have no idea what happened, and their brains are foggy, so the air is also foggy. There's a serious level of confusion as to what just happened, and the set and lighting matches that feeling really, really well. Here we get a really fantastic shot with the old computer. God damn, do I love CRT monitors and old-fashioned technology. This looks so much fucking cooler than some dumbass MacBook Pro. Like, can you imagine if this deranged Antarctic research scientist used a fucking flip goggles or whatever the fuck? This is how to really effectively deliver exposition, in part through lighting, because this model of computer is cold and calculating and clinical, and it doesn't give a shit whether the humans live or die. Unlike the chess wizard computer from earlier though, which was green, notice that this one is almost entirely blue. Nobody's mind is on the technical exterior anymore. Everyone is drawn into the thing-focused interior. Here's a really nice exterior shot from the scene where Binnings is consumed by the thing. Notice that for the first time we see these blue lights which are lighting up the outside of Outpost 31. You have to ask, why, out of all the lights that they could have chosen to light the outside of this Antarctic research facility, would they choose blue lights? It doesn't really light up the outside as well as white lights would. Snow is not naturally blue, it's actually just naturally white, and if you were to step outside on an actual snowy night, it wouldn't be all blue like this, but there's so many blue lights everywhere that you just feel really cold. Also, of course, we have all these windows which are just solid white. Like I said before, windows are also a very common motif in this film, which is interesting because there's the character windows. Although that's probably just a coincidence. Here we got a nice shot of RJ about to toss the flare at Binnings. In a ton of scenes in this movie, flares create, you guessed it, lens flares, which look really nice on actual film. Blue and red, that nice halo of light, signaling that no matter how bad things might be, a well-placed stick of dynamite or fire stick can torch any goddamn thing that tries to imitate humanity. Of particular note here, too, is all the nice snow and breath that just condensates over the entire group as they huddle around their dead friend. It's really epic. And of course, I feel it's necessary to address the stupid rumor that in the final scene where McReady confronts Childs is actually the thing because he doesn't have any visible breath. As if not having visible breath was some kind of sign that you were the thing, even though in this scene, with the Binnings thing, it does exhale, and there is visible breath. So that doesn't make any fucking sense, and if you think there's any way to tell whether or not Childs is actually the thing, you're kind of missing the whole fucking point of the ambiguous final scene. Anyway, moving on. Now to the scene where the blood is stolen. During this scene, and I'm pretty sure this is intentional, pretty much everyone's face is half cast in shadow, because they're kind of throwing shade at each other, as it were. All except our boy Kurt, of course, who remains lit from above like a cherubic angel. This might be a happy accident, but I also really like how the fridge door distorts Doc's face here, like he's in a funhouse mirror maze, or, as in the case of the thing with the two faces that are stretched. It looks kind of like that. Again, that might just be a happy accident, but the lighting here, where everyone's face is shrouded in secrecy and they're all throwing blind accusations at each other, is very much intentional, and really helps to heighten the tense claustrophobia of the scene. Alright, now here we have the scene where MacReady gives his inspiring speech about how some of them have to still be human, because if they were all the thing, then they'd just kill him. They're standing around a nice blazing orange fire, and the firelight is reflecting off all of their faces. It's a very hopeful and optimistic scene. But what I think you should take notice of, especially here, is the large blue light center frame right behind Kurt Russell, which kind of symbolizes the thing waiting out there in the darkness beyond the perimeter that the fire has created. Now again, you might think it's kind of a stretch to equate the thing with these cold blue lights, but if we equate blue with cold and cold with the thing, because remember, the thing loves cold. The thing doesn't hate the cold. It thrives off the cold. It can survive for 100,000 years in the cold. Then I think this makes a lot of sense. These blue lights are a symbolic representation of the thing. Now for the bit where Macready, how have I been pronouncing it? Macready, he's sitting down here giving his final message to whoever finds this tape just in case they all go down with the ship. And notice here the similarities between this scene and the earlier scene with the chess wizard. He also has his trusty bottle of alcohol here, except the green light has been replaced with a muted blue tone behind him. There's some very nice gray light coming in from the hallway, but primarily we have that solitary lit lamp on the desk, a symbol of Macready's isolation and the feeling that he can't really trust anyone. And again, one aspect of the thing which I think isn't brought up nearly enough is the overwhelming use of VCRs and tape recorders and all these cool gadgets and gizmos and shit. Like, I get that it was the 80s, but just objectively, finding Macready's abandoned cassette tape out in the snow would be a lot scarier and more intense than finding a fucking iPod or whatever, which is probably what happens in The Thing 2011. Backing up just a bit here to prove my point about how integral technology is in The Thing. Here we have the nice RCA CRT TV monitor that they use to watch the Norwegian footage. TVs are used a lot in The Thing, such as the weird dancing program that they're watching, which is a lot like the dancing shows shown in Old Boy or the TV shown in Fight Club. TVs pop up a lot in great movies, especially CRT TVs, because they convey a kind of loneliness that flat screens just can't. Now this footage, this Norwegian footage, is a great example for anyone who wants to make analog horror effective, scary VHS footage, because it really does look completely genuine. And if you think about it, this is found footage. This Norwegian stuff actually is one of the earliest examples of found footage in film. Even if the entirety of the thing isn't found footage, this shit is found footage, and it's a great example of what can be done with VHS in movies. As Doc says, there's 9 hours of this footage recorded onto good old VHS tape, and man, would I like to see all of it. Just keep in mind that when a TV is used in a movie, it's oftentimes symbolic. It's not always just a TV. The other weird thing to notice about this footage is that it's in black and white, even though this is the 80s and, the Norwegian team would probably have a color camcorder or something to record this on. The black and white just makes it look a lot older and a lot more distant, a lot more ancient, as if the team at Outpost 31 is really far removed from whatever they've uncovered. Okay, now for the scene which is one of the best lit in the movie and inspired me to make this video in the first place. Fuchs is sitting alone at his desk when Macready comes in behind him, but you can't really see Macready, he's kind of poorly lit, but Fuchs is extremely well lit in the foreground. This creates a great contrast. It's immediately visible if you just look at this shot. This is right before Fuchs goes outside and finds Macready's ripped up uniform out in the snow, so it gives the impression that Macready could potentially be the Thing. And at first, when Fuchs spins around, he thinks Macready is the Thing, because if you hear a noise behind you, under these circumstances, you would assume that it was the Thing. Just a really great opening shot to this scene, but I want to get to every shot in this scene because they are all fantastic. This is when the lighting in the Thing hits peak performance. Here we have the smoking gun. A fuse is blown and the darkness is gathering right around this lamp. The camera focuses specifically on this lamp, and look what color the lamp is. Blue. This is a really subtle nod to the audience. Pay attention to the lighting. This is what, again, made me make this video in the first place, because this shot is just so obvious and it clicked in me. Hey, the lighting. And this entire scene where the fuse goes out and suddenly the characters are without light is a reference to the lighting. It says, hey, pay attention to this. There's something to be found here. Obviously, this lamp being blue is no coincidence. Just like the lights outside, it's a symbol of the Thing. The lamp slowly turns itself off, and the Thing's power slowly grows. Just really cool and subtle and effective filmmaking on display here. This might actually be my favorite shot in the entire movie, just on the basis of how scary it would be for Fuchs, if this actually happened to you, like the light goes down, holy shit, and you're alone with the thing. From there, the camera pans down so we get a real good view of Fuchs's desk, his notepad, his pen. But notice what color everything is now that the lights have gone out. Everything is blue. Now, presumably, this is from the blue lights that are strung up outside. Like I said, they give everything a blue color. And since the fuse is out and the blue lights are the only thing that remains on, you can assume that they're kind of emergency power lights in the case of something like this happening. But then you have to wonder, why would they choose emergency lights that are blue? It's not like you can see particularly well with blue lights. Why not just opt for white emergency power lights that are better at showing you what's going on? The answer is because white power lights that are specifically set up in case of an emergency would be too convenient for these characters, and we have to make it difficult for these characters to see and know what's going on. The less these characters see, the more suspenseful it is, and the less the audience will know who the thing is. It doesn't make any sense in universe as to why Outpost 31 would have blue emergency power lights, because you can get them theoretically in any color. But it's an atmospheric decision on the part of the filmmakers that you wouldn't even notice if you didn't really think about it. So it doesn't matter. This is great filmmaking right here. It's so fucking atmospheric. As Fuchs exits the room, he's holding the flare right beneath his face to give it that nice campfire ghost story effect. Really simple lighting trick, but it works. The windows right behind him are real solid blue with a thin sheet of frost to give it a little bit of distortion, but you can still tell this is very intentional, direct studio lighting to give the impression that outside it's just an abyss of blue. And Fuchs and his tiny little flare, his tiny little paper-thin candle there, are the only thing keeping the thing at bay. Just goddamn, what a great frickin' shot. Just Fuchs looks so frickin' good here as he holds his hand in front of the flame to keep it going, and you got the panel of the door to the left, and then the thing pops by, and the thing is completely obscured in shadow. So this scene, again, is my favorite in the entire movie, if I haven't already said that. This is the best lit scene in the movie. Hot shit. This is such good lighting. So now they're out to check on Blair, out in his little shack, and the entirety of the exterior has been transformed into a wintry wonderland here, with the nice blue and purple snow, the purple obviously being from the flare, blue mixed with orange equals kind of a purple tone. But what I want you to notice here in particular is the window of the tool shed where Blair is being held prisoner. It's just a solid muted gray behind those boards. That isn't actually how the window would look if we were looking in on Blair. That's just a sheet of white stuff there. Again, we have the recurring motif of windows that don't actually make any sense, because if you look at the tool shed when MacReady opens the door immediately after this shot, there is nothing in the shed that could produce a solid white color like that emanating from behind the window. It just couldn't happen. So this is very intentional lighting on the part of Dean Cundy, or whoever was behind the lighting department. Probably Dean Cundy. This is a great fucking shot. The window just being a solid color kind of gives the impression that it's alone and isolated, kind of like the logo for the movie Home Alone. You know, the house with just the one little yellow window. It's kind of like a Monopoly house, but just one little window out there just saying, hey, somebody's in here. You don't know who. They're home and alone. This is a very nice shot here. Now we get the bit where MacReady comes in, pissed as all hell because they've betrayed him and they think he's the thing. But Kurt Russell ain't gonna be the thing, baby. Kurt Russell eats the thing for breakfast. In this shot here, we get some really cool effects from this big-ass sputtering flare. We got the smoke coming up, kind of making Kurt Russell almost an angelic figure, which he is in a lot of shots, especially how he holds flares all the time. Kind of a beacon of light. And of course, all these boxes sitting around, you get a lot of neat geometric 3D flickering effects from the big-ass flare that just sputters around. Kind of like an M.C. Escher drawing or something with all these storage crates about. Above all else, this scene really highlights just how epic Kurt Russell is and how he isn't going to put up with any shit. So yeah, A1 sauce all around. This scene here is a real treat. The spider thing is an iconic piece of the movie, and it really wouldn't be the same without it. Notice how in this shot in particular, which is our first view of the head growing the legs and eyes, the thing is mostly in silhouette, and the light is shining from behind it with a lot of that fire extinguisher smoke that we got earlier in the scene with the dog thing. A recurring motif, to be sure. I really like how they save the mystery of how exactly the spider thing looks until the subsequent shot, but you can tell just from this one that it's not looking good for any of these guys, and they're kinda fucked. As is said later in the scene, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Yet another lovely shot, this one directly after the blood test scene as the thing bursts out the door and into the cold Antarctic night. Now obviously this scene is a reference to the classic 1950s original Thing movie where the thing is also set on fire, except I would argue that in color the thing looks a lot cooler. The fire is almost pretty, and of course we have that nice purple and bluish snow behind it. And here we have a full-on blizzard going around the thing. It's not just a quiet night out anymore. It's a full-on flurry of snow just splashing into the camera as the thing runs out in the center of the frame. Really pretty shot, actually, despite the really gruesome subject material. It's actually kind of beautiful if you look at it. Really good color composition on display here. Here's another really nice purple and blue shot. All three of them heading out to Blair out in the tool shed only to find that he's escaped. But look at that window. It's still lit up from the inside, even though in this scene there's nobody in the tool shed and all the lights inside are off. Now we could chalk this up to, oh, that's a continuity error. Oh, the filmmakers weren't paying attention to what they were doing. But I like to think that, generally Dean Cundey and John Carpenter knew exactly what they were doing, and keeping the window lit like that with the little white sheet of whatever is a pretty good damn lighting effect, and I don't really care. It doesn't ruin my immersion. I mean, we're talking about a movie that has a ton of stupid nitpicks up on IMDb under the goofs section, like, at around 1 hour, 20 minutes. Although Fuchs has told them that the alien organism is highly infective, they don't care about sharing the same knife to get their blood samples. Well, yeah, no shit, they have rubbing alcohol on hand, and we see it in the scene where Doc and Clark and Gary are given morphine. Stray dogs potentially carry rabies and distemper and other transferable diseases. As a result, no one responsible for dogs would immediately place a found one in a cage with a set of working pack dogs without checking it or giving it a period of quarantine, etc. first. Well, yeah, no shit, most dedicated scientists would, but Clark isn't a dedicated scientist. As the dog handler, he has a bias towards the dogs and cares too much about these stupid dogs. And the stupid Americans in general, as compared to the Norwegian team, care way too much about how cute this fucking dog is, which is why they let it roam around the outpost unhindered for like a week straight before they finally decide to lock it up. The Thing really is a badass movie if you think about it, because it's about how stupid Americans are and they can't just shoot a dog even if the dog is going to spell the end of the human species. They're like, oh, this pupster is so cute. This is a deliberately placed theme in the film, that Clark is sick in the head and that he's willing to do absolutely anything for the safety of these dogs, even if it means putting the entire team at risk. You'd have to be kind of dense to miss that. Like, no shit, Americans are way too obsessed with fucking dogs, even if the dog is like a mutant alien thing that wants to kill you. I swear this entire row of hipsters that was laughing their asses off the entire time I was trying to watch this movie and get into it. I think they were stoned. They were like, oh, that Doge is the best actor. Oh, he's so cute. Oh no, they're not gonna do something to the Doge, are they? Oh no, something can't happen to the Doge. And I was like, shut the fuck up. That dog is a fucking alien thing and it's gonna kill everyone. I don't give a shit if something happens to it. Seriously, if the entire movie they had just listened to the Norwegian first off the bat and shot the dog in the fucking head, then the entire plot could have been avoided and they all could have been saved from imminent doom. The thing really is just about, like, how obsessed we are with dogs and how we'll, like, defend them to, like, ridiculous ends. I think if The Thing was made today, PETA would probably get involved and be like, oh, this shit is too far, this shit crosses the line. But this was the 80s, back when movies were badass and you got to see a dog splitting open into a flesh flower. When Mac, Gary, and Knowles are underground, they split up and go alone to separate areas to plant the explosives. They do this instead of staying together, despite knowing full well the Thing usually attacks a human while they're alone. Well, yeah, that's assuming that all the characters here act in completely rational circumstances, but the movie wouldn't work if they just all stayed together, and also they're all trying to plant explosives in as wide an area as possible so to blow the entire outpost up, which they couldn't exactly do if they were all sticking together at all times. This is why it's so awesome when MacReady shouts off, "Hey, how you doing?" and there's no response, and MacReady knows, holy shit, the Thing got both of them. That's fine. Who gives a fuck? It's atmospheric, it's cool, it's effective. Of course they're going to split up. There's barely anyone to stick around with anymore because there's only 3 of them left and everyone else has died. What are they supposed to do? Just huddle together and wait for the Thing to eat them? No, they're gonna split up. If everyone in movies acted rationally in their own best interests 100% of the time, then there wouldn't be a fucking plot. The Thing, specifically, is a movie about people who do not act in their own best interests and make stupid decisions. I mean, it's mentioned on the IMDb Goofs page that on the exterior of the tool shed the boards are shown horizontal, but on the interior they're shown vertical. But nobody seems to notice that there's a light emanating from the inside of it, so I guess I'm the first person in history to notice that. But it's not like I care, because I think John Carpenter and Dean Cundey are good enough filmmakers to realize that the audience won't nitpick all this shit unless they're a neurotic IMDb user. Anyway, I got a bit off topic there, so let's get back to the subject of lighting. Speaking of the basement scene, the part where they descend down the stairs and there's shadows on the steps behind them, and you got these awesome lens flares coming off, again, the flares, with just as much smoke as before, with those nice blue horizontal lines stretching off in either direction. And of course you have this really interesting noisy leakage dripping down from the roof of the basement, falling right in front of Kurt Russell's flare there. Now, I'm not sure if liquid would drip this much in like sub-zero temperatures, but as with the snow particulate and the smoke particulate and all the fire extinguisher stuff, this is just a nice little flurry of visual ephemera to toss in front of your light source, which is a very cool technique. Now the epic shot I was talking about earlier, where MacReady calls out into the dark, but there's no response. What's really cool about this shot in particular is that it's the first shot since the opening of the movie which is lit realistically. There's no blues, no exaggerated oranges or purples, it's just MacReady alone down here with 2 Molotov cocktails, a detonator, and a white lantern. I think this lantern, being just a normal lantern instead of a wacky blue or orange or purple one, is a symbol of MacReady's lingering humanity and the fact that he's the only one left down here, alone with the Thing, face to face in the pit of despair. It's a really nice touch, and quite jarring actually, after all the surreal, fantastical lighting outside. And now the explosive finale, Outpost 31 blown sky high. The great thing about this shot is that it displays the entire outpost in one big wide frame. Notice how we don't see anything behind the outpost. All we see is a pure, dark void of nothingness. Basically, if you think about it, being in Antarctica in that alien, frozen, inhuman terrain, it's a lot like being on another planet. I mean, life isn't suited to exist down in Antarctica. It's the most inhospitable climate Earth has to offer. You basically have to wear as many layers in an Arctic or Antarctic climate as astronauts have to wear to shield themselves against the vacuum of space. This shot really hammers home just how isolating the Antarctic research experience can be, how far removed Outpost 31 is from any vestiges of civilization as we might recognize it. This is a really cool shot to end a movie on, and it's all thanks, in part, to lighting. Not too much to mention about the closing conversation between MacReady and Childs. There are some out-of-focus embers behind Childs, which kind of represent the lack of investment both of them have towards the state of the outpost now that the outpost is nothing but wreckage. It's out of focus, out of mind, so to speak. But I think the better of the two shots here is McCready's. Of particular note is the faint twinkle in McCready's eyes, because he's still human, and even in the encroaching darkness, his humanity lingers on. You can still see those pupils sparkling. The fire kind of gives an outline to the edge of his hair, even though he's mostly encroached in darkness. And the pulsing score by Ennio Morricone, which sounds a lot like a Twilight Zone score, as well as the flickering of the flames, kind of signals the dying off of life here, the end of existence. Atrophy, starvation, freezing. But Kurt Russell isn't fucking dying because Kurt Russell's a badass and it doesn't matter whether Childs is the thing or not. Kurt Russell's gonna stab him through the fucking gut and torch him with a fucking flamethrower, and then he's gonna run off and hop aboard a whaling ship or something, because that's just how Kurt Russell rolls, baby! Anyway, there you have it, a little breakdown of all the lighting in the 1982 Thing. Like I said, this is easily one of the best lit movies I've ever seen, hands down, so if there are any shots I missed that you think are worth bringing up, leave them down in the comments below. This is a new format for me, just kind of narrating over still images, but I kind of like it, so if you like this format, let me know, and I might do some more of these. I think lighting really is one of the most underrated aspects of the film industry. Much like how sound engineers in the music industry never get enough praise, even though if they weren't there, music wouldn't sound very good. Lighting is all about making sure things look good. It doesn't really matter how great a director or cinematographer you have if your lighting is shit. And The Thing is a really, really well-lit movie. Just a great example all around. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and comment and subscribe and all that stuff, unless you think I've been taken over by The Thing, in which case please torch me with your flamethrowers. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. See you in the next one. Sayonara, suckers.
Fuck you too!